Hello and welcome to the final book I'll be covering during my October-November theme of ghost stories, cryptids, and the paranormal. Monster Hunters was published in 2015 by Tia Krulos. This is on the trail with ghost hunters, Bigfooters, ufologists, and other paranormal investigators. Now, Tia Krulos is an author and a journalist. He also had a blog for a while called Heroes in the Night. I'll leave that down in the description box below. The last entry when I checked it out was March the 2nd, 2016. So I'm not sure what's happened with the blogging. And as I say, this book was published in 2015, so maybe he was just using it to advertise his books. I'm not sure. I didn't read a lot of the articles as I was going through it. But I very much did enjoy this read. There's 14 chapters to the book. On the back it says, "Do ghosts exist? What about Bigfoot or skinwalkers? And how will we ever know?" Journalist Tia Krulos spent over a year traveling nationwide to meet individuals who have made it their life's passion to hunt down evidence of entities that they believe exist, but that others might shrug off as nothing more than myths, fairy tales, or the products of overactive imaginations. Now, on the inside, the introduction, he says, "Millions of Americans go about their lives in what's considered a normal way. Their interests are not the supernatural, but ESPN, Wall Street, better homes and gardens. They wonder what's on TV tonight and what's for dinner. Sometimes they enjoy a ghost story or catch a rerun of the popular reality shows like Ghost Hunters or Finding Bigfoot. Maybe they've had an eerie experience, but they just shrug it off. Maybe they think it's all foolish folklore, kid stuff. And then back to the routine, job promotion, parking ticket, pay bills, field trip permission forms. And for downtime, weekend fishing trips, art museum, video games, curl up with a good book, meet up with friends for a drink. Millions and millions of people, normal lives, normal hobbies." This book is not about those people. Now, and yes, we already know I am the book murderer. So in here, I've made note of each of the chapters and what it covers. Throughout the book, he mentions Loren Coleman. He's a cryptozoologist, has a museum. First chapter is about him. And I was quite surprised when I read the book Sasquatch that Loren is barely mentioned. There's only one article where his name comes up in passing. So I very much enjoyed reading more about him. The book also talks about PIM, an investigation group that Tia joined and went out on a few investigations with. It was fascinating to read about them. And one of the team members very much stood out to me, partly because of my own circumstances and how my back injury got worse. But in this case, one of the team members is an ex-policeman. What happened to him is a vehicle had gotten stuck on the tracks. The train was coming. He hopped out, got the woman out of the vehicle. She was freaking out, didn't want to go. He couldn't understand why. Finally, it came out that her son was still in the vehicle. The officer couldn't see the child because, like so many vehicles these days, the windows were tinted. Thankfully, Everything worked out. The child was okay. Unfortunately, the officer was not. He got injured during that time and ended up having to leave his job after just a lot of things that he went through in terms of physically having to regain some things, but he could no longer continue to perform his duties as a police officer. So he became involved with this team. In chapter 3, and I really enjoyed that, the author talks about skeptics who he had also met with. There is a website he refers to, doubtfulnews.com. Again, I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. The woman that he spoke with was Sharon Hill, and on page 51, the title is Criticizing a Scientifical Approach. In 2010, Hill wrote a thesis paper titled Being Scientifical: Popularity, Purpose, and Promotion of Amateur Research and Investigation Groups in the United States. It focuses on paranormal researchers and their methods, specifically ghost hunting groups. They are the epitome of scientifical, Hill said, using her term for methods that appear to be scientific but really aren't. Quote, I don't know what it was like in the 70s when there were these UFO groups. I think they were sort of the same. They were amateurs. They weren't trained in science, but they were interested in doing the right thing in investigating. End quote. Having read a number of books about UFOs back in August when that was my theme, I was very concerned to read about a number of those UFO researchers who were doing hypnosis on people, and they were not trained counselors or therapists. They were just people who had figured out how to do hypnosis and were dabbling where they really shouldn't have been. Again, with hypnosis, there's that whole issue of false memories. I definitely know about that because sadly a cousin of mine went through hypnosis, had false memories, accused her father of things that were not true, and she ended up losing the last few years of time with him because of that. So I'm very leery of anything to do with hypnosis. And lucky for me, as one of my teachers when I was in college told me, I'm not a good subject because my brain's all over the place and I just don't slow it down enough to go into that type of thing. It's probably why I'm not really big on meditation. I know a lot of people find benefit from it and they can do that, slow down and relax and connect. It just doesn't work for me. I do other things like listen to music and what have you. I've done some meditation exercises successfully. It's just not something I can do daily because I really have to work at shutting busy brain down. Another thing that he goes on in chapter 10, he talks about Reverend Larson. Totally creeped me out, but partly because I was born in 1964. I remember everything that came out because of Jim Jones, that entire horrifying incident. For those who are not familiar with it, no, they did not all willingly drink the Kool-Aid. Some were shot. So I know there's a lot of jokes about that and other things, but it was a very horrific event. And with this Reverend Larson, it's just, the grift is disgusting. There's people who buy into it. They seem to believe that he's peddling his big D demons. And yeah, it's a chapter that probably out of all of them, Maybe because I've seen that big D dumped into so many of the paranormal videos, because that's what seems to get views. It was a very interesting chapter to read for sure. Chapter 12 about Linda Godfrey is very interesting. She had gotten a job at a local paper in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and her aim had been to become the editorial cartoonist. However, she is best known for her werewolf chronicles. She had written a story about the sighting of a werewolf on Bray Road. On page 220, Godfrey's article ran in the week on December 31st, 1991. We thought it would probably cause some chuckles and be gone, but in 2 weeks it became national news. The 2-page spread was just the first of hundreds of pages she would end up writing on the topic. The Beast of Bray Road, as it had come to be known, drew attention from across the country. So people began sending her information, their experiences, and there she was delving through all of this stuff. From that point on, I sort of became the person people started sending their reports to, and that media came to. As soon as the story appeared, I started getting phone calls and letters from all over. Godfrey continues to get these reports via emails, phone calls, and letters. She found that a similar creature was already legendary in Michigan, where it's commonly called the Dogman. She began researching the Algonquin legends of the Wendigo, a half-human beast associated with cannibalism that purportedly stalks the woods of the Midwest and Atlantic coast. Terrified and confused people have sent her reports from as far away as Germany. I'm not sure about his take on the Wendigo. I've watched a channel from Canada. They're in Quebec, and they talk about the legend of the Wendigo and its location, and I'm not sure if that's actually in the United States. If you know something about the Wendigo or have researched it, let me know in the comments down below, because sadly what does seem to happen, particularly with that term skinwalker, is it gets thrown all over the place. People use it as clickbait, same as the word demon, and things just get so muddled. But it is interesting that here is someone who had planned to be an editorial cartoonist and suddenly becomes the go-to person about werewolves and other things. So you really don't know where the universe is going to take you. It's very interesting reading about her. There are a number of different things that Tia covers. I think it's great that he went around and actually met these people, went out on the different searches, whether it was for lake monsters, Bigfoot, UFOs. The group PIM, which stands for Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, that was a fascinating read in terms of what they do, their experience, how they go about things, as well as learning about group dynamics, because although it starts with a certain group of people at the beginning of this book, by the end of the book there have been some disagreements and issues, and some of the team members are no longer part of the team that he had started with. During my live stream with World of Mr. Gray and Dead Cold, we were talking about the paranormal, a number of other things, and yes, we even did get to 30 East Drive, which was what the topic was about. But I also referred to this book. As I say, it was published in 2015, and there were some very horrific events that Tia talks about. They occurred not far from where his parents actually live. It involved 3 young teenagers, 2 who believed that Slenderman was real, and things got very much out of control. I think that was important to note, not just because he was close to the area, but because it's crucial to keep in mind whether you're putting out a book, a video, or doing a presentation somewhere, you don't know who's in the audience, how it's going to impact them, or what's going on with them at the time. And it's why I'm always trying to be super careful with what I say, how I say. When I'm talking about books, I always have it in the description box. I recommend that people try first their public library, see if they can give the book a test run for free rather than just automatically purchase. Check out on Goodreads, which is what I use, but there are so many other sites out there. You can find out what other people are saying and recommending about books. Particularly with the paranormal, I always recommend that people check things out. You have to go by what you've experienced, believe, researched, studied, and I definitely do not recommend just sending your money out somewhere unless you have done your research and some background checks. And it's truly sad to see how many people are just forever throwing money out to content creators, thinking they're supporting real research or that some of these people are living in some difficult situations when in fact they're not. The best example of that is he who I shall not name, thinking that he has Vlad Cepes with him because he brought some rock from, I think the story goes, he brought some rock home to England from Romania. If you've studied Vlad Cepes, as I have, then it should be a no-brainer that a prince from Wallachia from the 1400s is not going to follow some commoner back to Britain and hang around his house. Vlad was not big on common people. It was, I'm sorry, but he wasn't. And he certainly isn't about to hang out with one in the afterlife that far from his homeland, which he was immensely loyal to. So if Vlad is somewhere in the ether and still around, he's around Romania. He is not in Britain. Anywho, like Journeys of the Unknown, which I just had up last week, I think this is a great read for anyone who is interested at looking into different subjects, learning about what paranormal investigators do, the ones who are trying to find answers, not the ones who are doing it for entertainment. And again, the entertainment kind, it's not that I have an issue with it. I have an issue with they're not always upfront about being entertainment and they're conning people. So, much like all the fakes, during the spiritualism movement, we have a bunch of the fakes in the paranormal, and that's what makes it so much harder to find legitimate answers and understand different things. I definitely recommend giving this book a try. I actually borrowed it first from my public library. As I was reading it, I realized it is something that I would refer back to. As you can tell by the sticky tabs, I definitely have been. I've read it 3 times now. There's always something new to get from it, much like A Life with Ghosts that I've also recently covered. I came across that at my public library, and someday I will be purchasing a copy of that book as well. Let me know in the comments down below whether you have ever followed Tia Krulos, checked out his blog, read his other book, read this particular book. And until next time, remember, if you hear howling in the woods, it's probably better that you just head home, unless you're on the moors. And then, like David, you're probably already toast. Take good care.